Hello again, this is Frank Reynolds coming to you from White Pine Studios hilltop location in the scenic Upper Valley region of New Hampshire. I'm broadcasting via YouTube's Opening to Utter Totality channel. The prime purpose of opening utter to totality is to support the formation and operation of one or more Zoom groups, which in turn are focused on the study and practice of certain Tibetan Buddhist Dzogchen teachings, which I'm going to discuss in more detail later in this clip. I want to not neglect to thank the people at YouTube and Google, YouTube's parent company, for making this resource available. I also want to mention that I'm creating my videos at this point using Wondershare Filmora. And I also want to appreciate Filmora, Wondershare Filmora, without giving the impression that my product is a very good advertisement or representation for what this video making software can do, because I'm entirely new to it. I probably don't have to tell you that I'm an amateur at this, and I have found the software quite easy to learn and get up to speed and become functional on. And I'm utterly convinced that there are a vast amount of features and capabilities that I haven't begun to explore, and many of which I will probably never explore because I expect to just do homegrown stuff. So I can't prove to you technically and visually that this is really good software, but I do want to do a shout out to Wondershare Filmora because I'm finding it very enjoyable to use, even though by design, by nature, software like this is technically challenging, I'm sure, for probably everybody who's dealing with it for the first time. So that's what I have to say about that. Since we're just in the beginning stages of forming the first Opening to Utter Totality Zoom group or groups, a primary purpose of all of the video clips I've produced so far is to provide information for prospective members of this Zoom group as to what the group is going to be about. And as I mentioned in the first introduction to the group, description of the group functioning video that I did, people will not be able to opt in directly to this group, but can express interest in participating, and then the members will be invited, which may sound a little snobby, but is not meant to be that way. The point of this approach is that the groups are going to be very small and intimate, 12 to 15 members, something like that. Not stadium seating and hundreds of participants, most of whom never have a chance to ask a question or say a word, but a really intimate group and an ongoing group that with luck will keep going over a fairly long period of time, rather than to cover a topic in 10 sessions, for example, and then disband. So therefore, we're being careful about how we compose the group, especially the pilot groups, which are intended to start this fall. So, in short, this is additional information that could or should be useful to anyone considering whether they want to ask to be invited into the Zoom group. So, in particular, today I want to talk about the spiritual teachings and practices around which opening to utter totality Zoom groups will revolve. Because really this material, these teachings, these Buddhist teachings, were my primary inspiration for creating opening to utter totality Zoom groups. Now, the teachings that the group is going to revolve around are from the Tibetan teacher Longchenpa, usually called Longchenpa, who did spiritual practice and study, lived as a sort of a reclusive monk in caves, I think, for most or all of his life, in Tibet in the 1300s. Did a prolific amount of written production, especially when considering that he didn't have internet access, and that at the time the way books were produced in Tibet was to hand carve the content of the book in wood blocks and print, as you've probably seen examples of, long, narrow sheets of pages from these wood blocks and then collecting those in sort of packets that make the equivalent of a book, each one. And so that's the form in which the extensive written teachings by others that Longchenpa studied were delivered. So he must have had stacks of these books in his cave and had a very good filing system, because his knowledge is comprehensive of a very vast array of teachings, and his ability to summarize and digest and reference writings by others is also very impressive. But I want to kind of step back from talking a little bit more, singing a little bit more particular praise of Longchenpa. And there's talk about this, what's for me always a gee whiz factor with spiritual teachings, which I frame by thinking of practically any modern scientific discipline of which I have any familiarity, say medicine, for example. If there were some medical treatise produced 700 years ago, and then brought out today, and this would be true with many other sciences. I'm sure you can think of numerous examples. Written 700 years ago, taken up today, that manual would be probably of no practical benefit, or practically no, or almost no practical benefit today, because the discipline, the knowledge base, the technology, the science, all of that would have just changed so radically over the 700 years. So it's like if a physician from the time of Longchenpa were to have gone into suspended animation like Rip Van Winkle and been disinterred, this year or something, it would be like, oh no, sorry, doc, we don't use leeches that way anymore. And yet, Longchenpa and many other teachers who lived as long or much longer ago than Longchenpa inquired into the nature of reality, the nature of their own minds. They used pretty much just their minds and just their own human capabilities to make these inquiries, although since I'm sure you've done spiritual practices, you know that inquiring this way means using capabilities differently than conventionally use our consciousness in many respects. But Nevertheless, point being, they didn't have electron microscopes and fancy laboratories and any technology really whatsoever beyond the human mind and body, their human mind and body, and the support and wisdom of others, contemporaries, and those who lived before them. Didn't have any of that, and yet what they produced, at least what many of them, and probably we can say this is true of any of these writings that has survived, because they wouldn't have survived unless they were found to be relevant in the time after they were produced. So they are, unlike the 1300s medical textbook carved in wood blocks in Tibet, they are as relevant and useful today as they were in their own time. Which I say, this is no kind of profound observation. It's right there in front of us, and I'm sure it's occurred to many, many people, but it's still, as I say, has a gee whiz impact in many respects for me. Longchenpa says many times in the Precious Treasury texts that not only does he intend the teachings and practices that he presents to benefit his contemporaries, but they are also intended to benefit and liberate people of future generations, like us. Now, the way that these teachings were transmitted in Longchenpa's time is very different from certain aspects of the way that the teachings can be communicated today. I'm not a scholar by any means of this tradition, so I'm not trying to present any kind of authoritative, historically accurate depiction, but just my best understanding, and I would welcome any kind of corrections that people may have of it. But fundamentally, in Longchenpa's time, the teachings that radiate from the Precious Treasury, particularly because they're associated with what is regarded in Tibetan Buddhism as the pinnacle of all Buddhist teachings, the Zopa Chenpo or Dzogchen, translated commonly as great perfection, but also as utter totality, which is how the name for the group, this group derived. So particularly because these teachings were considered the apex of all Tibetan Dharma, and which Tibetans are confident enough to regard as the apex of all Dharma everywhere, because as you might expect, Tibetans put Tibetan Buddhism at the top of the heap. So, so particularly because these were the highest teachings, they would have been even more carefully controlled than more general teachings, probably almost entirely transmitted to monastics, monks and nuns. And for one thing, I don't think many of the general public were literate at the time in Tibet. So even if these woodblock printed books got out, they couldn't be read. A monk would have to come along who was literate and read them. So as far as the written teachings go, only monks and nuns could read them, and then the tradition was to present them via talks and practice sessions led by an authorized lineage teacher or guru. So the teachings were regarded as the name of the series implies, as precious and pure, and were very carefully and cautiously controlled within a remote country anyway. So there's another layer or ring of control, and also a country that had very low population density. So these teachings weren't going to go viral in the 1300s in Tibet. So, yeah, very carefully controlled, wouldn't generally be taught to anybody except what we might call initiates, people who had proven their integrity and devotion and so on. And so, that was the deal at that time. Now today, 700 or so years later, let me see if I can heft this. Oh, one fell off, excuse me. I can heft this entire stack of I believe these five volumes of the Padma Publishing edition of the Precious Treasury. I believe that even though there are more volumes by Longchenpa in the Treasury, I believe these are the only ones in print, at least in the Padma series. So, and you can purchase them individually, or you can purchase the collection, etc. And you will have noticed that I left the dust jackets on a couple of the volumes so you could see that turquoise blue color and recognize the volumes if they're on your bookshelf or a friend's bookshelf or whatever, either with a dust jacket or without it. So, but the point is, and this, fortunately, in my humble estimation, these the translations of these volumes are superb and very powerful. The physical volumes themselves are beautifully composed. In many cases, on facing pages, you will have the Tibetan source version of the text, and then on the left-hand page and on the right-hand page, the English translation of the text. So, and these are available on the open market. Although, as far as I know, there's no general public stampede to buy and read these texts. So in a way, they still maintain to a certain degree their own privacy or secrecy. But in any case, the fact is that they're out there and they're available, and that has some implications for how they're communicated, of course, and probably has both risks and benefits as far as if one is concerned with maintaining the integrity and profundity of these teachings and their vaunted reputation and so on. But so there are risks, but I feel, particularly given the quality of the way that these teachings have been ported over from an ancient Tibetan culture to our modern culture, there are many more benefits than risks involved in having them available in this form. So I spoke in a broad brush way in both of my earlier video clips posted here on the Utter Totality YouTube channel. I spoke in a broad brush way about the difference between a direct vehicle such as Dzogchen, Great Perfection, Utter Totality, direct vehicle, direct teaching approach, versus the developmental or progressive path approach of all of the other Buddhist vehicles, with the exception of Mahamudra, which is up there with Dzogchen as direct. So I'm not going to rehash what direct versus developmental or progressive approach means, but it does have a considerable amount of bearing as to how we're hoping to immerse ourselves in these teachings in the opening to Utter Totality Zoom groups. And I should also mention that in the second of my previous clips on enjoyment body teaching, I actually give enjoyment body practice, excuse me. I also give guidelines for practice, which harmonizes, shall we say, with the direct approach. So you can look into that if you haven't already. But what I'm trying to do now is talk about this relative to how we will take up Longchenpa's Precious Treasury teachings in Zoom group discussion and practice. So in to illustrate, just thumbnail the comparison between developmental and direct approach. In a developmental approach to Buddhist spiritual teaching and practice, in formal traditional way at least, the authorized teacher, human teacher, individual, or guru, in some cases, is the teacher. What the teacher presents, or either in spoken Dharma talks or in written Dharma teachings, what the teacher presents is the teaching. And then what the students understand, absorb, and perhaps one could even say attain or realize of those teachings in their own lives and their own person is the result or the goal or the culmination. So another way of saying developmental or progressive, moving from a starting point along a path to a goal or end point different from the starting point. And there's a common division in the way Tibetan teachings are described and presented as ground, threefold division: ground, path, and fruition. So by extension, the ground is the teacher presenting the teachings. The path is the process of hearing and understanding the teachings and practices. And the fruition is digesting the teachings and practices very deeply and to the point of being evolved or transformed by that process. Now, in Dzogchen, the direct approach, where these developmental path notions are leapt over or done away with, however you want to put it, the ground is awakened awareness, or would sometime, there are many, many terms for awakened awareness. Basic space of phenomena is one that Longchenpa likes and that we'll talk about a lot. But anyway, lots and lots of terms, which many of you are probably familiar with. But Rigpa is a common one, single Tibetan word for awakened awareness, major fully awakened awareness. So Rigpa is the ground. Rigpa is also the path, you could say. And Rigpa is the fruition. So it's like the Zen Mando, where the teacher was asked, what's the most important thing in Zen? Teacher says, attention. And then the student draws him out by asking, what are the three most important things in Zen? And he says, attention, attention, attention. Well, so the three most important things in Dzogchen are Rigpa, Rigpa, and Rigpa, or awakened awareness, awakened awareness, awakened awareness. So again, here's the one of the challenges of the whole Dzogchen approach is that since the view is that we don't have to evolve or become enlightened or realized, because in our core essence, we already are and always are, and so is everybody else, completely realized, completely enlightened. The catch being, of course, we're blind to this largely, or it's at the very least obscured, and we may get glimpses, but from time to time, but unless we're realized beings, we're not immersed in this ultimate reality in an ongoing way. So the way one takes up Dzogchen level, great perfection level, utter totality level teachings and practices is different from the way one relates with developmental path practices, in that we need to somehow steep ourselves in the very essence of these practices and bask in the blazing bright sun of awakened awareness. And the reason that I'm so enamored of and appreciative of the Longchenpa's teachings in these Precious Treasury volumes is that this is exactly what Longchenpa is spurring us to do, to recognize and rest in fully awakened awareness, or a Rigpa. Well, of course, big question mark comes up for most of us. what does that mean? And Longchenpa tries to be very helpful with that also, although I'm not going to even remotely suggest that it's easy to do this, or since really there is nothing to do or attain or achieve, to not do this. So I'm not even remotely suggesting that it's easy, but I do feel even with the manifest formidable challenges inherent in this view, it's possible. And I feel this because Longchenpa is so convincing on this point and so incredibly relentlessly dedicated to communicating this wisdom uh, to others. At least encouraging us that it's possible to experience the natural occurrence of this awakened awareness, because we can't manufacture it, contrive it, imagine it, describe it in writing, etc. So it's possible to discover it, get out of the way enough that it can genuinely arise within our own experience and our own being, and then rest in it. And if it works, I like to believe that it takes care of itself at some point, but we'll have to see. So I talked earlier about, in one of my earlier talks, first of my talks, I guess, describing the functioning of opening to Utter Totality Zoom groups. I talked about how, in particular, we're going to work with these materials in the group, literally. So I don't need to go through that again, but I just want, I guess, to leave this particular talk in appreciation for this, for the availability of this astounding individual's compassionate, heartfelt gift to all of us. To say that I look forward to working with others in this very modern day communication mode of online video meetings, and working with you to mix our minds with the mind and terrific inspired energy of this fabulous teacher, and exploring and discovering what are the most effective ways to do that, and then finally sharing them with others, because I can't believe that even though we're starting very small, maybe one or two pilot groups initially, that with any luck at all, this is going to want to spread, to put seed pods in the wind, as it were, and spawn other groups, and hopefully over time benefit many people. So that's all I have for today for you. This is once again Frank Reynolds, founder and proprietor of Opening to Utter Totality, coming to you from White Pine Studios, hilltop location in the scenic Upper Valley region of New Hampshire. Until next time, goodbye and good luck and great good fortune.